Okay, get this headline.
Yes.
San Diego State University normalizes pedophilia as a sexual orientation, saying it could be part of the acceptance of diverse sexual identities. Okay, so there's one. That's a war on family and
That
a
is so
war on
disgusting.
societal norms. Okay, here's the next one. Hey guys, Sean from SGT Report here. Thank you so very much for tuning in. So before we get to the interview, I do want to thank the sponsor of this video, Virtual Shield. Over just the last 30 days, Capital One, the Central Bank of Europe, and the great state of Texas have all been hacked in major data breaches. So who's next? Look, one of the best things you can do to help protect yourself online is invest in a VPN, a virtual private network. VPN allows you to create a secure connection to another network over the internet. VPNs like Virtual Shield can be used to shield your browsing activity from the prying eyes of Big Brother, whether you're on a public Wi-Fi connection at a coffee shop, in a foreign country, or at home. You can go to virtualshield.com, download the free 30-day trial, and install it. Here, let me show you how easy this is. I just go up to this little icon, the shield up there in the upper right-hand corner. I click it, and then I connect to Virtual Shield. And now you can see that my IP address says that it's coming from Chicago, Illinois. I don't live anywhere near Illinois. So that's how a VPN works. This month, Virtual Shield is offering their anniversary special of 30% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, and VIP performance plans for as low as a cup of coffee. Sign up for your free 30-day trial to Virtual Shield VPN and see what the hype's about. You have nothing to lose and your privacy to keep. I'll leave the link below this video. Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Thanks so much to my patrons and all of you for tuning in here. I'm so happy to have back on the line Lynette Zang from ITM Trading. She's the chief market analyst over there. And Lynette, we haven't spoken in a long time, and I think that's by divine intervention because as fate would have it, the SHIT hit the fan with repo markets seizing up. Zero Hedge asking if the Fed has lost control of the most important market in the world. And meanwhile, I've been talking about the fact that the DOJ is accusing JP Morgan's precious metals trading desk of being a criminal enterprise. It is such huge news, and we're finally seeing arrests of the criminals at JP Morgan. So Lynette, let's just talk about the chaos hitting the repo market. How significant is it?
Well, it's huge because it's showing you the lack of liquidity in these markets. And hey, you might recall that it was something very similar to that happened in 2008 that froze the mortgage-backed security market. So yeah, this is a very big deal.
Yeah,
it's a demand for dollars to satisfy this debt that they just don't exist.
It calls to mind Bear Stearns. Right? I remember Jim Cramer telling everybody, literally the day before Bear Stearns went from 58 to $2. Buy, buy, buy.
Peter writes, should I be worried about Bear Stearns in terms of liquidity and get my money out of there? No, no, no. Bear Stearns is fine. Do not take your money out. This is real. If there's one takeaway other than a plus 400 somewhere, Bear Stearns is not in trouble. I mean, if anything, they're more likely to be taken over. Don't move your money from Bear. That's just being silly. Don't be silly.
Liquidity is not a problem. So what happens when liquidity dries up? Like, take a look at the stock market. When liquidity dries up, what does that mean to the guy holding Amazon at $2,000 a share? What does it mean to the guy holding stocks that nobody wants to buy?
Exactly. Well, it means they'll still be holding them, and maybe they go to 2, or maybe they go to 5, and you can't even get rid of them because there is no market for them. Because this whole system is based on debt. And at some point, debt comes due, and I think we're very close to that point, if we're not already there, quite honestly. I mean, the system really did die in 2008. So, yeah, there were taxes that were due, corporate taxes that were due. Now, usually what corporations do when they have a lot of debt that's rolling over, which is another thing that happened, is they just roll over that debt. But because they didn't have the dollars to pay their taxes, roll over that debt, and interest rates have also been spiking over the last few days, well, that's why you get that mismatch in the markets and that lack of liquidity. So yeah, the Fed had to come in and save the day, to the tune of, I think it was something like 58 billion that they had to put into the markets. And I think that's new money.
$58 billion. It's just another bailout, right? Who got the money?
Yes, it is exactly a bailout, because this whole game based upon your ability to continuously grow more debt. Well, come on. You can't grow, a tree doesn't grow all the way up to a sky. Even though a tree will have some solid foundation, our foundation in this whole monetary system is debt. And we've already hit peak debt. We hit that in 97. And yeah, the action in the markets last night really show that the liquidity is a big problem, both here and also globally, because there's been so much written in terms of dollars, and the entities that have to pay these dollars don't have them. That's why the Fed had to come in and save the day. And what happened when they did? Well, interest rates dropped again, and now we've got, the Fed Chairman Powell coming out with a new, what are they going to do with interest rates, which really is purely manipulation. All of it is just pure manipulation.
Now, you use the word manipulation, and that's the perfect segue over to this story about the DOJ investigating the precious metals trading desks over at JP Morgan. They're accusing JP Morgan of being deeply involved in what prosecutors described as, quote, massive multi-year schemes to manipulate the market for precious metals futures contracts and defraud market participants. Now, we'll read more about this article in a second, but you and I and my friend Bix Weir and Bill Holter and everybody else, Claudio Grass, who I've spoken to regularly over the years, we've been talking about this forever. And the naysayers, really the people peddling the official story, like to say there is no manipulation of gold and silver. It's a bunch of BS. And now, under RICO statutes, people at JP Morgan are being arrested. And they're talking. So this is a big, it's maybe the biggest story of the year in terms of economics.
Well, on so many levels, too, because what you're talking about them doing is manipulating the value of real money, what we see, to keep their profits. But I think it goes way higher than just the arrests that have currently happened. So it'll be really interesting to see of the involvement, which I don't think we ever really will.
Yeah, I'm having some internet connectivity issues on my end. This is nothing new. This is not your fault. I think it's my fault. So would you mind just restating that for me, Lynette, the significance of this? Because we've been told for many years that there is no manipulation in the precious metals markets. And now these guys are being rounded up.
By the CFTC, and yes.
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I think it goes much, much higher than that. Because, it's been going on for too long. If there were any real oversight, or if anybody really didn't want that manipulation to occur, it would not have occurred. But I'm not sure that we're ever really going to know the full extent of where all of that manipulation came. For the traders, okay, so they're manipulating not just gold and silver, but they manipulate everything because it's just about a profit, which goes back to what you were also talking about with the treasury market and the manipulations that we're seeing there. This is about the traders. This isn't about the real people or even the real economy. I mean, look at these markets. So I don't know that we're ever going to know the full extent, but yes, I mean, so they'll throw them a bone by some lower level people, but really, where did it come from? I think much, much higher than what we're seeing, much higher.
Yeah, well, I think it originally came from Jamie Dimon and Blythe Masters. So now Blythe Masters evidently was not named in this indictment. However, I want to read this to you. The unusually aggressive language embraced by prosecutors reminds legal experts of indictments utilizing the RICO Act, a law allowing prosecutors to take down criminal enterprises like the mafia. And in the indictment unsealed on Monday morning, the DOJ charged Michael Nowak, a JP Morgan veteran and former head of its precious metals trading desk, and Greg Smith, another trader at JPM's metals desk, in the probe. Again, Blythe Masters was somehow omitted. She's no longer there, by the way. But she is the architect of the derivatives and the silver and gold rigging. And again, Bix Weir and I have talked about that in some detail. So this is really the chickens coming home to roost. And I can't imagine that this would be happening in a Hillary Clinton DOJ. in a Hillary Clinton presidency with the DOJ under her control, I cannot believe that this would be happening. So when we talk about sealed indictments, this is a very big one to be unsealed.
Yes, it is. So, what do you think that means? Because it's still even higher than even Jamie Dimon, most likely, since a rising gold and silver price is an indication of failing currencies. We certainly know how involved JP Morgan is with particularly silver, but also warehousing gold. I think it's way even higher than that. Do you think we're going to get there? Do you think we're really going to uncover the truth finally?
Well, I think truth outs and logos is rising. So I think that there is a chance. We stand a chance because, again, I didn't see this coming. I didn't see JP Morgan being fingered
Right.
by the DOJ and being treated like a mafia, a criminal enterprise. And the problem here with their gold and silver rigging is they hurt so many people. They hurt so many people that were buying silver as a hedge against worst case scenarios at $30 and $40,
Yeah.
only to be sucking wind at 14, 15 years later. And I want to quote this: the defendants and others allegedly engaged in a massive multi-year scheme to manipulate the market for precious metals futures contracts and defraud market participants. They defrauded all of us that bought silver and gold to line their own pockets. And it is truly, truly criminal, because not only do they not want us to have honest money, even when those of us who are smart enough to go and buy honest money, when people are like this are allowed to rig the markets, we get screwed. So again, it always comes back to Wall Street screwing the little guy.
It does, and that's really why it's critically important for people to really understand what money is and how the system works, because you only get screwed if you believe their lies. Personally, I don't believe their lies. I know even at $50 an ounce silver, it's still severely undervalued. Even at $2,000 an ounce gold, it's severely undervalued. But we have been trained to believe what Wall Street is telling us, when clearly, and this is a really good example.
Yeah. Internet connectivity issues on my end, so apologies to the audience. So one of the quotes here from former trader John Edmonds during an October 2018 hearing after pleading guilty to commodities fraud and conspiracy is this. He said, quote, "While at JP Morgan, I was instructed by supervisors and more senior traders to trade in a certain fashion, namely to place orders that I intended to cancel before execution." These fake orders, this front running of the market that they're so good at doing and getting away with for so long, is why JP Morgan had a nearly perfect trading record. I believe in 2017 or 18, I'll have to go back and look, they only had 2 trading days in which they lost money, Lynette.
Exactly. I remember that very clearly. I mean, you're either an absolute genius or you're manipulating the markets. And now, I mean, it's not a shocker. We didn't think they were that genius. So it's coming out that they've manipulated the markets, but I don't know why anybody's surprised. And really, when you're thinking about gold and silver, you're thinking about sound money. But they would rather you stay inside of the fiat system because, hey, when these markets collapse or when we go back to there is no liquidity, so you can't liquidate anything, you're stuck inside of the system, where do you think all that wealth goes?
What are you guys telling your clients to do right now in light of all of this tumult? I mean, we've been talking about it for a long time. Are you just telling people to keep stacking silver and gold, or is there a more strategic way to protect oneself and diversify?
Well, as far as securing your ability to survive this mess, because the system is resetting. And I think that's really why all of this stuff is coming out, because we are now so far along in the reset mechanism that it's hard to hide this. So, for us, we have a strategy that I actually created for myself before I even got here, based upon those repeatable patterns. But generally speaking, so yes, you need to keep accumulating and stacking both gold and silver. But in addition to that, you need to make sure that you're as independent as you possibly can be. So a lot of that is food becomes the biggest issue. Food, water, energy, security. The gold and the silver in fractional form are your barterability so you can survive this mess and still buy everything else that you need. But then the gold is going to put you in a position to take advantage of the opportunities, because just as we've talked about the whole system being based upon this mountain of debt, what do you think is going to happen to the value in terms of the dollars or euros or wherever you're watching from? What do you think is going to happen to all of those severely overvalued assets when nobody can keep this debt mountain floating anymore? And that's the importance of what happened in the repo market. It shows a huge crack in there. You need to believe that, because what's going to happen, the most likely outcome is for the value in terms of the fiat to drop significantly of all of this income producing real estate, for example, that is now so ridiculously and severely overvalued. But it won't evaporate into the ethosphere when there's a collapse. It will, however, get a whole lot cheaper. The markets could very well just evaporate into the ethosphere because you can only convert them into dollars or euros or yen, depending upon, which market you're talking about. You can only convert it back into fiat. That's the lie. That's the real manipulation in any of this. And to then further take advantage of it, why is that shocking? Yeah. It's the way the system's been designed. Why is that shocking?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at Zero Hedge. I just want to read a couple of headlines to you, because it is shocking. And the whole system has been aligned against we the people for so long. So let me just read these two. Listen to these two headlines, and then we'll wrap it back up with JP Morgan rigging the markets for precious metals and getting away with it since 2009, and I would argue probably long before 2009. Get this headline.
And they're not the only ones.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Deutsche Bank, HSBC.
They're not the only ones.
They're all in on it. Okay, get this headline. Yes. San Diego State University normalizes pedophilia as a sexual orientation, saying it could be part of the acceptance of diverse sexual identities. Okay, so there's one. That's a war on family and a war on societal norms. Okay, here's the next one. Trump seethes at the New York Times, demands resignation of all involved in the Kavanaugh smear story, because again, a new lie about Judge Kavanaugh, which has already been disproven and spread by the New York Times. And he also demands that they be fired for the Russian witch hunt hoax. The Times is dead. So there's the attack on our president and the constitutional rule of law and the executive branch by the Mockingbird mainstream media. The previous article, an attack on family. And of course, the JP Morgan story, an attack on our money, an attack on our system, an attack on those of us that are trying to do the right thing by criminal banksters. So that's just 3 examples of this system being aligned against we the people.
Oh, there are so many more.
It never ends.
No, well, it is ending. And that's the thing, Sean. It is ending. And we are closer to that today than in any of the previous conversations that you and I have had. Those cracks are obvious. People are sit-ins, which is really critical. Because you've also got, let us not forget that you've got the global central bankers that are on a tear to own integrated and fully interoperational, which means that there's just this massive network of payment systems that they control. And if they are indeed successful with that, that means that after everything gets reset, these bankers will remain in control. And they'll have every single thing that you and I do going through their system and hands before they distribute it. So it goes into one central location. I mean, you talk about those headlines, but woven underneath are what's happening in the banking system in an attempt, because the whole banking system is changing anyway with a lot of the startups and the fintechs and what have you. The system that we knew died in 2008, and they are in process of creating a new system that is even more controlling and taking away individual rights, because the system that they're working on right now through the payments means that everything is digital. This is what they're saying. Everything is digital. It passes through the central bank and the government's hands first before it gets distributed out. There is nothing that you're going to be able to do if they decide that they don't want you to have that payment. Bam. Oh, you don't agree with their political views? Bam. You're just simply going to be cut off if what you're depending upon has to go silver in your possession. It's always been important. And in my opinion, for 6,000 years, it's been important. The most likely outcome, especially looking at the voracious accumulation of gold by global central bankers, is that going into the next, even more important that you have a portion of your portfolio outside of this system. Because if they have their druthers, nothing will be outside of their system. Nothing.
100% right.
That scares me even more than anything else. Honestly, it does.
100% right. Would you do me a big favor here as we wrap this up? Could you guys turn off the video on your end and we can just round this out with an audio conversation? Because I'm having all sorts of connectivity issues here. Can you guys turn off the video on your on Zoom? There we go. Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Hey. All right. Well, I think you're 100.
Yeah, that's a huge issue, Sean.
Well, I think you're 100% right. And this is the other multifaceted attack, right? I mentioned the other attacks. We've got attacks on the family, attacks on the Constitution and the sitting president, attacks on our precious metals. We've got this attack, too, coming in the form of UN Agenda 2030. And it's this whole,
exactly,
we got to save the planet by, as one Swedish behavioral scientist suggests, eating humans. We've got to give up our rights to using energy, gasoline, natural gas, coal. We can't burn coal. We've got to move to solar. We've got to move to wind. And we got to do it by 2030 or the planet will die. That's what they're telling our children. And these teenagers are scared to death. I don't know if you've seen any of these videos, Lynette, but you've got children crying over this stuff. And I can tell you firsthand it's working. I've talked to teenagers. I have kids of my own. And a lot of people that I've spoken with, young people, think that human beings are the problem. And that's exactly by design. That's exactly Tavistock Institute by design. They want everyone to believe that human beings are the problem. And the only way to save the planet is to curb the freedom of human beings.
Yeah, it is really, and this is what we're fighting against, but there is some hope. And I'm going to throw a little bit of hope out there because I read a recent government report that stated on cash use, and the two groups that use the most cash are the ones that are under 25 and my age. Okay, so you've got coming up, as scared as these kids are, and you would think that they would be more attuned to their, using their cell phones for payment. And I'm not saying that they aren't, but I was really, really shocked when I saw the heavy use of cash by the younger generation, and it gives me a ray of hope. Gives me a ray of hope. Because even though cash is losing value rapidly, what's it, 3.9 cents out of the original dollar's worth of purchasing power. And that's according to the Federal Reserve, which means it's worse than that. But I'm hopeful that people will start to recognize the value of having some level of autonomy, sound money, and privacy.
Right.
Because I do not want my grandchildren growing up being, fully surveilled and then being forced to do what the government wants them to do because they are cut off from opportunities, from their wealth, from everything with the push of a button. And you're experiencing some of that right now, but in a much milder form than what they have in mind for us.
Right. The censorship is part of this. And you mentioned this
Exactly.
just a minute ago in the interview. In the future, if they don't like your politics, boom, they'll just hit a button and they'll turn off your chip. They'll turn off whatever it is that allows you to conduct business, to buy, to sell, right? This is market the beast level stuff. But we've seen a little bit of this already with people having their PayPal cut off, people having their Patreon canceled, people having their YouTube channels terminated. Again, if they don't like your politics, because you're standing up to the establishment and offering an alternative view on these official stories, they just can turn off your chip. They can silence you. They can deplatform you and deperson you. And it's only going to get worse if we don't stand up and fight back. So I like that you're seeing the cup half full with people using cash, because, again, if they take away our cash, it's just one more way to limit our freedoms.
Exactly. And they're, they can do it within weeks. They can get you to volunteer it. And it's really a genius program, but it just goes so much deeper, and it's all sold. I mean, this is the disgusting part, but it's all sold on convenience.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more convenient. You have your phone with you all the time, which means they can track every single thing that you do.
Yeah.
And they can score you on it. I mean, look at China. I think China is a great example of where they want us to go.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading an article, a guy, an expat who was living in China, jaywalked. And by the time he got to the other side of the road, they had debited his account for the fine for jaywalking.
Unbelievable. Yeah, the social
Right?
credit scores, right. And we have Google in bed with the Chinese rolling all of this stuff out. And Google, by the way, owns YouTube. People forget, Google is the world's #1 most heavily trafficked website. I know people don't think of it as a website, but that's what Google is. It's the world's #1 most heavily used website. And guess what #2 is, Lynette? YouTube. And they own them both.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the Chinese, the social credit scores, they would love to carry that out here too. And if they don't like your politics, you get debited. You get too many. Well, they're doing that already on YouTube. Three strikes and you're out. They take your channel.
Yep. So, we are in a very precarious position. It makes physical gold, but it goes back to that independence, because you can't eat silver or gold, although it is universally recognized and barterable. Right. So I think everybody needs to be prepared, because when this system crashes, and I've got to look into a little bit more of what happened in the repo market, but, look, they know the flash crashes are coming. They know, they know what they've done. They have really just destroyed free markets. There are no free markets, and they know it. And when enough people recognize that, and the rest of that confidence and trust is lost, well, you better be in a position to be as independent as possible. A small garden, putting some sprouting seeds, in your freezer. So 3 days of rinsing, you've got some good nutrition, dried food. I mean, this is critical. And you can't start too soon, because when the crisis hits, you're going to go to the grocery store and there's not going to be anything on the shelf. It's not frozen. Oh, and that is something I wanted to tell you about. So I'll come back to that in a second. But even if you have access to the money in your bank account, even if you do, there's not going to be anything to buy. Get ready now. This is a warning. And by the way, our experience, where we do get a lot of wires for, pretty reasonable sums of money. It'll vary. And we're getting report after report after report from clients on how difficult it is and how much of a hissy fit they have to throw in order to get those funds wired when they're buying gold or silver.
Interesting.
Now, Megan, we just had to do it with a piece of furniture from France. That was pretty easy, right? Right. Piece of furniture, who cares? Gold and silver, they care a lot. And people are shocked that this is happening, that they're having such a hard time getting their money out they've got to be protected from themselves. It's the excuse that I'm hearing from my precious metals consultants in the back. But the incredible part about it is that the perception is that money that you have in the bank or the annuity or wherever you are holding it in the fiat system, that is yours.
Mm-hmm.
And what people are starting to see, and when you're getting this kind of pushback, when you tell your bank to do something because it's your money and they say, no, we're not going to do it, it's because it's not really your money. Legally, you are merely a beneficial holder, a beneficial owner, and your rights are on the bottom, not the top. You make that deposit into Chase or Wells Fargo or Citi or oh, I don't know, why don't you do the laundry list of who's been accused of so far of manipulating gold and silver? Any of those guys, you make a deposit, you are loaning them that money. It's not yours. So I'm going to tell you that one of the things, and it's part of the strategy, because even though the cash is losing value, initially we have been trained away from gold and silver. So we recognize a $10 bill, even though it doesn't buy you as much as it did a year or 2 or 10 or 20 or whatever years ago. But the problem with all of this is in that manipulation piece, that is just perception management. And that's why, and I hope this happens faster, that's why the confidence is beginning to decline, because people are trying to get their wealth, and they're discovering that the banks are letting them know, not really yours, it's really ours.
Yep.
Too bad, so sad.
It's 100% true. People don't understand that if you have money in a savings account at Wells Fargo, at any of these banks, you're a creditor. If the bank collapses, your cash is gone. They claim it as their own. And evidently, they legally have the right to do that. I can't even begin to unwrap that as to why that would be, but that is the case, guys. And again, if you're looking at your ones and zeros in your portfolio and you're seeing that you've got a $1.7 million portfolio after 30 years of investing, try to take delivery of those stock certificates. Just try. Call your broker and tell him that you want your 1,000 shares of whatever it is you've got. It's a nightmare. In fact, it's not worth even trying anymore. It used to be 10 years ago. It wasn't hard to do. It's really hard to do now. And that's because everything has been bought and sold and rehypothecated and buried. And I don't think at the end of any particular day, any of the accounting actually gets done with all the massive trading we see in the bot-driven trading, the algorithm-driven trading on Wall Street.
Exactly.
It's just insanity, Lynette. And at the end of the day, if you've got a safe filled with physical gold and silver, that is peace of mind. It is real wealth.
100%.
And it's not, it can't be taken from you. Well, it could be stolen, but it can't be taken from you from the criminals on Wall Street.
Right. Exactly. It runs no counterparty risk.
Yeah.
Everything else is all counterparty risk. And you didn't read the contracts. So who do you think those contracts are written for?
Right.
There are lots of lawyers are paid to write these contracts. They're not in your best interest. And to bury anything that might give you a clue in that itty bitty teeny weeny fine print, like you just said, it's not even worth it. I don't know that that's necessarily so. And I can't say that this is true today, but when I was a stockbroker, what you could do to get your stock certificates, so I'm going to put this out there just in case it's still the case. I know they're trying to make it all a book only entry, which means there's no way to take delivery, and that's true with bonds. You cannot take delivery of a bond certificate anymore. But if you call the client support at the company whose stock you own, then you might be able to have the corporation deliver out the shares. I know that was true years ago. I can't really say that that's true today because I haven't even tried to do it in many, many, many years. But we used to be able to do that, not go through the broker, but go directly to the corporation whose stock, whose shares that you own, that you perceive that you own, and get delivery that way. While we still can, because they're working on converting stocks to book entry only as well. And there'd be no way to do it.
Well, I'll tell you what, guys, if you want to talk to Lynette and her team over there at ITM Trading, Lynette, tell them how to do that.
Well, we love human contact, and we are a family here that is growing. So you can reach us at 888-696-4653. We do have the YouTube channel where we talk about all of these topics and lots more. And of course, our website is itmtrading.com. So we're easy to get a hold of, and there's lots of us here. So, and we are all here to be of service. It's really key.
Yeah. Well, and again, I appreciate your time. It was a fascinating conversation. It always is. There's so much going on. I feel like we've just, we barely touched the tip of the iceberg here in this conversation. But, and again, my apologies, guys, for the internet connectivity problems on my end. I think it's a Wi-Fi issue. I got to get that figured out. It seems to be getting only worse lately. But our guest today has been Lynette Zang from ITM Trading. Thanks, Lynette.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Sean. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you.
Your work is so important. You need to just keep it up.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I really do. It's demoralizing, when YouTube is doing what it's doing to so many of us, but we'll just keep hacking at the root. I mean, that's all we can do, right?
That is. And, things like this is all about building community, and it is demoralizing and it is discouraging. And that's really what they're counting on. So we have to do just the opposite, because that's what they're counting on.
Yeah, it's psychological warfare, which I mentioned in that last video. It's absolute psychological warfare. It's trying to shut us up because they don't like what we're saying. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate your support. A special thanks to my patrons. You're keeping us in the fight. You truly are. So thank you. God bless you all. And for real news 24/7, you can visit us at sgtreport.com, the corporate propaganda antidote. God bless. Bye-bye. It's outrageous how absolutely criminal the system is, and how criminal the Democrats are, and how criminal the Democratic donors tend to be. Case in point, Ed Buck,